Hey guys, welcome back to Willing Computers. Malcolm Fogarty here. Just going to have a discussion video today about things that have been going on in the last week and what I've been up to, systems that I've been building, problems that I've had, and yeah, so let's get into it. First of all, I'd like to talk about the latest system that I've built from used parts and some new parts in it. It's I call it an NZXT Gamer. It's in an NZXT Phantom 420 mid-tower case. It's a white version. It has a, now what was it? It's a MSI ZH77A-G43 motherboard with a i7 3770, 16 gig of RAM, 128 gig SSD, 500 gig hard disk drive, and a 550 watt power supply. Now, the beginnings of this system were the case. I bought the case off Gumtree. Cost me $60, and when I went and picked it up, it looked brilliant. It looks brand new on the outside. I got it home. Woman said to me, all the fans are inside. So I brought it home and I sat it on the workbench and I opened it up and it was filthy. Absolutely disgusting. I pulled the fans out and looked at them, and the dust was just caked on them, and pulled the front cover off and dust bunnies fell out. And anyway, needless to say, I stripped the whole thing down and gave it a good clean. Tried to wipe off the fans. I've never seen dust like it. It was just caked on. A wet wipe wouldn't move it. I had to use the cleaning sprays to get the stuff off the fans. They were that. I don't know what the people had been doing with it, whether it had been sitting on a carpeted floor and it had been acting as a vacuum for 12 months or what, I don't know. Whether they were heavy smokers. I mean, I'm a smoker myself, and yeah, it was just that caked on that it wouldn't come off with a wet wipe. So I spent probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, cleaning the case up and the fans and all that sort of stuff, and it looks brilliant. It is a really nice looking case now, inside and out. But I stuck a couple of the fans in it and turned it on, and they didn't work. I mean, unsurprisingly, they were that filthy. I don't know. They just didn't work. They were there, but they didn't work. So that's neither here nor there. I just replaced them and it was fine. So anyway, to the motherboard I put in it. Now, I bought it off Facebook Marketplace. I paid $50 for it. It had an i5 processor in it, and it had 8 gigs of RAM, 2 4-gig sticks. And I brought it home, and I set it up on a test bench, and it just kept boot looping. Wouldn't boot up. I swapped the RAM in it. Still wouldn't boot. I took the processor out, put an i7 in it. Still wouldn't boot. And by that time, I was kind of a bit fed up, and I just put it to the side for a couple of days, and I came back to it. I did a CMOS reset on it, and it started working. It wasn't working brilliantly, but it started working with the i7 in it, with one stick of 8 gig Corsair RAM in it, and a Cooler Master cooler that I'd put on it. Now, when I say it wasn't brilliant, what I mean by that is that as soon as I started it up, the CPU fan ramped 100%. And I tried adjusting it. I went into the tweaking section and adjusted the fan down, kept adjusting it down to 0, and it was just still running 100%. So I've got a bit of a sneaking suspicion that it was either used as a mining board or it was heavily overclocked, and somehow it's been burned into the system that the CPU fan runs at 100%. I mean, I even did a BIOS update on it, and it still runs at 100%. Somewhere in the chipset there, it's just frozen itself at 100%. So I moved the CPU fan over to system fan 1, and it went down to about 50%. And I was thinking, oh yeah, that's all right. And I put it all together and ran Cinebench. And lo and behold, Cinebench starts up and the CPU fan ramps up like it's attached to a CPU fan plug. I don't know why, it just did. So this System 1 fan header, for some reason, is operating as a CPU fan header. That's fine by me. I have no problem with it. It means that the board is working as it should for if somebody buys it. Now, okay, the CPU fan header isn't working as it should, but the board works in a way that is good. So anyway, that took me a while to sort out. And then I thought to myself, well, I took the single stick of Corsair RAM out of it, thinking I don't want to run a single stick of RAM. And I put the original RAM that came with the board in, and it boot looped. So then I pulled that RAM out, and I put the freaking Corsair back in, and it boot looped. And I had to reset it again. So I expect that RAM's dead and it's doing something to the system, causing an issue. So I won't be using that RAM. Since then, I've put 16 gig of RAM in it for 4 gig sticks, and it's working fine. Yeah, it's got a brand new 550 watt thermal take power supply in it. Now, for all the people out there that they go in for these 1000 watt, 1250 watt power supplies, because they'll sit there and they'll go through the TDP of their CPU and the highest amount of power that their graphics card needs, and how much power the fans are going to draw and all this sort of thing, and they add it all up together and they say, oh wow, my system's at full belt is going to use 1000 watts of power, so they put a 1250 watt power supply in there, so they've got some overhead. Well, in all honesty, your computer is never going to run at full bore like that. You'll find that 99.9% of programs are either going to use a heavy amount of CPU or they're going to use a heavy amount of GPU. They generally don't use both. And most of the time, your system fans aren't going to run at 100% continuously. Your CPU fan isn't going to run at 100% continuously. Your graphics card fans aren't going to run at 100% consistently. There is no use in buying 1250 watts of power supply for a system that total usage, if everything was running flat out, is 1000 watts. It's never even going to use 1000 watts. something that runs 1,000 watts, you can probably get away with, say, 750 watt power supply. It's not going to use all that power. Never will. And that's the honest truth. So, and honestly, if you can pull 1,000 watts through a standard power point, you're doing damn well. It's not possible. 1,000 watts won't go through a standard power point. So you're never going to use that amount of power. It's not going to happen. But anyway, so that's the first thing that I had. Now, you might remember a little while ago, I had a machine that was in a brand new thermal take case with a brand new thermal take power supply, and I was using an Acer Veriton motherboard with an i7 in it, and I did a fresh build on it and put it all together, and it wouldn't fire up, so I connected another power supply to it externally, and it still wouldn't power up. And I sort of cut the video short and said that I'd get back to you guys and let you know what was going on as far as that was concerned. And it was quite interesting, actually. I got up and went and had some dinner, and then I came back and I was playing a couple of games. You know, I was a bit frustrated with what was happening, and thought I'd just relax with some games. And about 2 hours after I'd finished that video, the system automatically started up. I hadn't disconnected anything. I just left it the way it was. Completely just left it there. And I'm sitting here playing a couple of games, and the damn thing just fired up. It was weird. But anyway, so I ended up putting it all back together and put it back in the case. And, there's still a bit of a problem with that system. I've got a 128 gig SSD in there, and I've got a 500 gig hard drive in it. And when you go to boot the system up, it comes up saying it can't find the boot drive, and you press the reset button, and off it goes. It loads into Windows off the SSD. Not a problem. You can restart it, and it loads into Windows. Not a problem. But if you shut it down, it won't boot again. It just comes up saying to install the proper boot device and restart. So if you press the reset button, it boots straight into Windows. Restart it, and boots straight into Windows. But if you shut it down or turn the system off, it won't boot. Now, after thinking about it for a while, I've got to go into the CMOS and check if there's a setting clicked for hard drive delay time. That may be causing the problem. I'm not 100% sure how SSDs go with a hard drive delay. That's something that I'll have to check. But yeah, it's a strange one. I don't know why that's happening. So yeah, over the last 5 days or so, I've just been hitting problem after problem after problem, and it's been frustrating. That's just part of business, I suppose. Frustrations, they come and they go, and you'll have times where everything you touch works out perfect first go every time. And then you'll have a week like what I've just had, where nothing seems to go right. Everything seems to have a problem, and you got to work through it and sort it out and see what the problem is, and you get frustrated. And when I do that, I tend to slide over to my main computer and play a few games. My working area here, I've got a bench that's probably about 6 foot long, and on half of it, it's got my my main computer here, my streaming computer that I do these videos off and play my games on, and search for stuff on Gumtree and social media and all that sort of stuff, and run my business off. And then the other half of it is my computer building area and repair area and refurbishment area type of thing. And yeah, so sometimes you'll see I'll be sitting here like this, and you can see the door behind me and the racking behind me and all those sorts of things, and that's when I'm sitting in front of my main system. Sometimes you'll notice that in my videos you can see roller door. That's when I'm over the other side of the bench and working in my work area. So yeah, when I get frustrated like that, you can't just keep slogging away. Sometimes you have to stop and step away and let your mind relax. So I slide over to this side of the bench and I'll play a game, or I'll have a look at social media or YouTube, watch some of my favourite YouTube channels. Bit of a shout out to Carrie Holzman, Tech Yes City. You guys are great. So anyway, and yeah, it's a great way just to de-stress and take your mind off the things that are bothering you, and that's when you usually find that you'll come up with the solution. When you take that step away and just have a bit of a relax and play a couple of games, and all of a sudden, bang, it'll pop in your head. Oh, Jesus, that's probably what the problem is. Let's go and look at that. So that's the way that I deal with stresses in the business. So yeah, that was, they've been quite interesting builds. Within the recycling part of my business, I had a younger fella contact me. He saw an ad that I had on social media for ethical recycling of electronics, and he contacted me. And apparently, well, not apparently, but he does, this bloke, he loves working on old computers, like the old 286, 386, 486s and early Pentium stuff, and even the old Apple IIes and Commodore 64s and stuff like that. He just relishes it. And he's a nice bloke. He's I reckon he's probably about 30. He suffers with what's it called? He's on the spectrum. And I believe it's his way of dealing with the mindset that comes with being autistic. It's his way of escaping that constant mind thing. And yeah, I've had a lot of older stuff sitting around here for years, and I take him out stuff every now and then, and he generally will give me a couple of bits and pieces back, interesting stuff that I can use. But yeah, he's a really good bloke. The stuff that he finds and the stuff that he gets, it's amazing. I suppose the best thing you can say about how he gets his stuff is he goes dumpster diving. He will go to electronic stores and computer stores, and he'll ask the manager if he can go out the back and have a look through their trash. And he goes out there and he pulls all this stuff out and he takes it home and he tests it and he plays with it and he fiddles with it and gets it going. And yeah, he does a good job. He's very good with what he does. Also, our local tip dump here or as they call it, waste management facility. It has a really, really good recycling program in place. They take electronics, they take steel, they take cardboard, they take packing foam, they take mobile phones, car batteries, paints and chemicals, all sorts of things, and it's free. You can just go in there and dispose of it safely and free. And he'll go there as well. And they've said to him, yep, not a problem, you can go, you can have a look through all the electronics and phones and all that sort of thing, as long as you've got a good set of gloves on and some sturdy covered footwear, they don't have a problem with it. And the sort of stuff that he pulls out of there, like he pulled a laptop. It's an AMD based laptop with Ryzen based, so it's not that old. The only thing was he didn't have a charger for it, so he asked me if I'd have a charger. So the last time I went and saw him, I had a whole heap of old laptop chargers just sitting in a box that every now and then, if somebody asked me, I'd go through them and see if one of the chargers had fit their laptop. So I just chucked them into a box with a whole heap of other stuff. There was a couple of laptop hard drives. There was a whole heap of smaller fans, early graphics cards, 512 meg graphics cards and stuff like that I threw in there for him. There's a KVM switch. All this stuff I just threw into the box and took out to him. And as I was leaving, my father-in-law rang me and said that he had a couple of old compact systems, so P4 systems, wanted to know if I'd take them away. So I decided just to drop in there on the way to this bloke's place, and I grabbed them, and they had some interesting stuff in them. There was a 10 meg network card in it, and there was 4-port network splitter card in it and all this sort of stuff. So I took them out to him, and he loved it. He thought it was great. He gave me a Samsung Evo 850 480 gig 2.5 inch SSD. He also gave me a 128 gig M.2 SATA 3 SSD. And yeah, like the stuff that I'm tending, it doesn't really cost me all that much. It's stuff that I've either been given or I'm paying a really, really low amount for, just for purposes of recycling. Because I'll strip the drives down, and I'll drive cases are aluminium, and the platters are generally aluminium. Some of them are a glass ceramic, but most of them are aluminium. And like I can make a little bit of money through that. And so instead of doing the recycling that I was doing, I still do some with really, really old stuff, like hard drives that are completely dead, and some stuff that just isn't going to work. I'll still recycle that stuff. But most of the stuff that I was stripping down and recycling, he takes it off my hands, and it gives him something to do, and it makes him feel good and helps him with his spectrum. And I like to be able to do that for someone, you know. It's a good feeling to be able to help somebody who has a problem, to give them something that they're interested in, and make them feel better. So yeah, he got all this old stuff, and he was over the moon about it, and he gave me some stuff back, which it doesn't really bother me. As I said, this stuff doesn't really cost me anything, but if he wants to give me back something in exchange, then that's great. So anyway, I left his place and I headed to my parents' house. Now, they had a set of drawers there that they needed some maintenance done on, and my stepfather's in a wheelchair, my mother's had hip surgery, hip replacement surgery, and that sort of thing. They don't get around as good as they used to, and I go out there every now and then and do a bit of maintenance stuff for them and help them out. And my mother had been complaining to me for a while that her computer was running quite slow, and I wasn't 100% sure about it. I was thinking maybe it was something she was doing. Wasn't 100% sure what was going on. So after I did the maintenance on the furniture that they needed done, I decided that I'd go out and grab this Samsung Evo drive and I'd whack it in a computer for her to speed it up a bit. So I got the drive, I disconnected the CD-ROM that was in the machine, hooked the Samsung Evo up, and downloaded Acronis to clone it. And when I started the cloning process, it's checked C drive and told me that there are several sector errors. So yeah, it wasn't something that my mother was doing. Her hard drive was failing. So it was really good that I had that SSD there then, because it wouldn't have been all that long and the hard drive would have completely failed. Like it wouldn't clone it. It was that bad that the Acronis just locked up. So then I had to reinstall Windows, but her computer is so much faster now, she can't believe the speed at which this machine goes. I mean, it's an old socket 1155, 2400 i5, and it's got 8 gig of RAM in it. I mean, it's no speed freak, but it does what she wants it to do, and now to her it's like it's a whole brand new computer. It's 5 times faster than it ever was with the SSD in it. And I guess that was the first sign to me that things were starting to turn back around. So yeah, that was the first sign. But then when I left there, I went over to a mate's place. He wanted me to do a repaste on his processor. He's running a Ryzen 5 3400G with 32 gigs of RAM, and he's had a few issues with the machine. I like AMD stuff, don't get me wrong. It's great. I've been using AMD since back in the Sempron days. And there's been plenty of times, well not plenty of times, but there's been a few times where AMD's been the top processor and Intel's been down like they are now. But at the moment, you have to be so careful with your AMD stuff. If you're buying AMD, make sure you check your compatibility listings for the processor and for your motherboard and your RAM, because he bought this system from a large reputable company here in Australia. Cost him about $2,500, I believe. When he originally got it, it had 16 gig of RAM in it. It's Corsair Vengeance RGB 3200 megahertz. And when he recently upgraded the RAM in it, he just bought another set of Corsair Vengeance RGB 3200 megahertz RAM and stuck it in the motherboard, and he found he had some issues. First of all, he couldn't run the RAM at 3200 megahertz. It keeps if he turns his RAM up in the CMOS, it'll boot loop 3 times and then reset itself. And that was probably his first sign. And then when it goes into Windows, he can't get the RGB to work together as he wants it to. He can't set it properly. And he contacted me about it. He asked me what I thought the issue was, why the system wouldn't accept the 3200 megahertz and why his RGB wouldn't work properly. And I said to him, well, mate, the AMD stuff at the moment, it's very susceptible to compatibility problems with chipsets and RAM and stuff like that. And I told him to check the compatibility listings for his motherboard and the CPU. And it came back that, yeah, the RAM that he was using was compatible for 2 sticks of RAM, but if you went up to 4 sticks of RAM, it wasn't compatible. So this company that he bought the machine from, there were a couple other things that weren't exactly great about it when he got it. USB 3 front panel wasn't connected. Now, we know, those of us in the know that the USB 3 plugs on motherboards, they're not that great. It doesn't take much for them to fall out, to become disconnected. So it may be that it was connected when he ordered it, when it was shipped, but maybe in shipping it has fallen out. But then he's had me come and have a look at it a couple of times, and I pulled the back plate off it, and the cable management was shocking. I redid all his cable management for him, and got his fans and everything working the way that they should, and all that sort of thing. But for a company that's accepting $2,500 for a machine that they're sending out to somebody, I would expect them to take a lot more care in the way that they put the machine together. I mean, okay, they're probably under restrictions, time restrictions, as to how long they're supposed to take to put a machine together. But if it's causing those sorts of issues, then maybe they need to look at the time restrictions that they're putting on people that are doing the job, or look at the people that are doing the job and maybe get people in there that are a little bit more qualified. I don't know. I can't say 100%. But I would have also hoped that they would go through the listing of parts that he put in there and advised him that maybe if he wanted to upgrade his RAM at some time in the future, that the RAM that he had picked wasn't the best choice, that maybe he should pick something else. These are the type of things that I would think, if you're spending $2,500 on a computer, I would hope that someone would advise you on what's your best options, instead of just throwing together what you've picked out of the shopping list. But anyway, they didn't really do anything wrong, I suppose. There wasn't a compatibility issue with the 2 sticks making up 16 gig of RAM. So technically it was okay what they did. I just think maybe they should have given a little bit of advice. And also the thing with the USB 3, he realised that it had fallen out, and in trying to connect it, and those of us that are in the know how small the pins are in those sockets, he mashed the pins. Now, I spent maybe 10 minutes trying to straighten out the pins at one stage, and it didn't go back in, but I don't know. you could probably spend, if you spent probably an hour or so manipulating the pins, like you can't bend them backwards and forwards too much. You've got to be fairly precise at what you're doing and making sure that you get it straight, because you don't want to keep bending them, they will snap off. Yeah, maybe I could get it to go back in, but the way it is, it just doesn't work. It's whether they forgot, whether they neglected to connect it, or whether it fell out, I don't know. So I can't say. So anyway, what I did was I repasted his CPU for him, and he wanted me to have a go at overclocking the machine. So, yeah, no worries. And I was a bit dubious about whether it would work or not because of the issues with the RAM. But I went back into his CMOS for him, and the CPU that he's got, it runs at 3.7 gigahertz and 4.1 at turbo. So I thought, all right, I'll just sit it on 4.1 straight out, which is its turbo speed. It should be fine. So I set it all up. I also went in and instead of turning on DACP, I manually adjusted the RAM to 3200 megahertz, and it boot looped 3 times, reset itself, and then loaded Windows. No problem. So I decided, okay, this is the problem we have with DACP, so I won't overclock the RAM. I won't set the RAM. I'll leave it at 2133, and I'll overclock the CPU. And it booted into Windows, but it froze. So, yeah, there's some compatibility issues there. Poor AMD. I mean, it's not their doing. It's the chipsets that are on the motherboards, and it's the RAM. And I just hope that, like, we've got the 5 Ryzen Zen 3 5000 series coming out shortly, and we've got the Radeon 6000 series processors coming out, and I hope and pray that the chipset manufacturers and the RAM manufacturers all do the right thing and get their compatibilities with AMD right, because they're all compatible. All the Intel chipsets and all the RAM, and it's all compatible with Intel on the Intel base boards, but there are so many problems with the AMD stuff. And as I keep saying, it's not AMD's fault. They're making a good product. It's the chipset manufacturers and the RAM manufacturers that aren't doing their part in making sure that their product is compatible. But anyway, I overclocked his board, it froze, and we just decided that, yeah, it's not going to do anything. As soon as you touch anything, basically, other than adjusting fan speeds in the CMOS, the whole thing either boot loops or it just freezes. So there's a compatibility issue there, and without going out and buying another board and different RAM, you're not going to be able to fix it. So his $2,500 computer, like, yes, he could go out and buy more compatible RAM, but he doesn't want to have to spend another few $100s on RAM at the moment when he's got RAM in the machine that is working. Okay, it's not running at 3.2 megahertz, it's running at 2133, but it is working. So he's not going to go out and spend another few $100s on RAM at the moment. He's just going to put up with it. And I guess that in another year or two, he'll probably build another new machine. That's the type of bloke he is. He likes having the latest technology. It may not be the best of the latest technology, but he likes having the latest technology. And every 2 to 3 years, he does a whole fresh rebuild. And so that's probably what's going to change his system next time, is when he does another fresh rebuild. So that's what's been going on with me over the last week. Had some interesting ups and downs. Had some machines that are giving me hell. But that's part of the business. That's especially when you're dealing with stuff that people don't think is really worth much. They don't look after the stuff. They don't think it's worth anything. So you get it cheap. That's the good thing about it. But sometimes it takes a lot of work. And these computers that I'm building, like they're an i7 3770. They have Radeon R9 280s in them. They'll do 80 frames a second on high settings in Heaven benchmark, so that's reasonable. And they'll play most titles at 1080p on high settings. And for $600, $650, they're a good machine. But the separate parts, people just don't think that they're worth anything. So, I mean, the NZXT gamer that I've built, it probably cost me about $300 in parts. But the amount of time that I spent on cleaning everything and checking everything and solving problems that I had and making it all work together properly, and a new power supply and a new SSD and all the bits and pieces, by the time you add up the time, if I wanted to put the time onto the price of the machine, I'm losing. I mean, I've got a price tag of $650 on my machine. Yes, the parts only cost me $300, but the time that it took to get it actually up and running in a way that it's saleable and I can warrant it, put a warranty on it for the hardware and all that sort of stuff, I'm actually losing if I wanted to add in all the time. But I didn't start this business as something that was going to be a full-on money-making venture to start out with. It's something that I've done as a hobby for quite some time. It's something that I've got a fairly good in-depth knowledge of and tertiary qualifications for. And yeah, I can't add that time in to a build like that. But I see it as, if I can make $650 or $300 worth of parts, then okay, I'm not getting the amount of money that a normal technician would get if they went to a business and serviced a machine. But okay, for probably, what would it have been? It's to build, to strip everything down, clean everything, put all the bits together, do all the troubleshooting, make everything work properly, and do all the cable management and make it all look pretty and work nice and all that sort of thing. You're looking at 3 days worth of work. And I definitely put in more than $100 a day worth of effort, because, I mean, even at 5 hours a day, which I put in more than that, if I was working 5 hours a day, for $100, that's only $20 an hour. That's minimum wage. So, I mean, I'm not making money off it. I mean, yes, okay, I'm getting some cash in my pocket, but I'm not making money off my time. Yeah, and anyway, that's business. That's just the way it runs. If you can bring some money in, then you can bring some money in. If you're not bringing money in, then you're not making money at all. So the compromises, you've got to make the compromises. You've got to realise, well, okay, I've spent, 24 hours. If I think about a whole day, if I work for eight hours of the day, which is a normal working day, for 3 days working on these computers to build a good system that's fully tested, working completely properly, warrantable, so I know that most of the time I'm not going to lose out on warranty, I'm not going to have to replace parts and that sort of thing. That's 24 hours for 3 days, and $300 for 24 hours is about $13 an hour. Who wants to get paid that? You go out and you work for somebody else, as I said, you get at least $20 an hour. Working for yourself, especially when you're starting a business, you don't get paid that much. People think that somebody who runs a business must be raking it in. No. You have to have a passion. You have to have a passion for what you do. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. And I do. I have a passion for computers. I have a passion for computers. I have a passion for cars. And I have a passion for pizza. And they're the 3 things that I've worked in the most throughout my life. I've been in and out of pizza restaurants from anywhere from a delivery driver to shift management. Also other fast food outlets and retail outlets. I've been assistant managers and that sort of thing. Automotive, I've done just about everything with automotive. I've got light vehicle certification. I'm not trades qualified, but I've got light vehicle certification from my time that I've spent with automotive and gone and sat exams. And computers, I've got Certificate 3 in IT support. And I've been working on computers for a very long time. So they're the 3 things I'm passionate about. And yeah, I'm going to give computers a really good shot now. It's something that I haven't done a whole heap of work-wise. I have worked for a company that was subcontracted to Fuji Xerox Global Services. I was working for a government department. I was subcontracted to a government department, and it was very stressful working for government departments. It was in education, and I was in charge of 30 plus photocopiers, and then a whole heap of printers, and it was an extremely stressful situation to be in, and I left that job after about 12 months. Just couldn't handle it anymore, and I've come to realise that working for somebody else, I'm the type of person that I put in the hard yards. I do as much as I can. I work as hard as I can, and you get better and better at what you're doing the more time you spend doing it. But the thing is that the man expects more and more and more of you, and it gets to a point where you reach your peak, and you can't pass that peak. You do the best you can, but they just expect more and more and more. And that's something that I just can't handle. I've had to get away from working for somebody else, and that's why I've started my own business. The only people that I really have to answer to are my family for the financial side of it, and my customers. My customers are my boss. They're the people that tell me what I need to do. And for me, that's great because I have good customer service skills. I've been awarded for my customer service skills in retail and places like that. So that's something that I'm very good at. So having my customers as my boss is something that I'm very comfortable with. But anyway, as I said, that's what's been going on over the last week or so. Ups and downs in business. That's the way it goes, ebb and flow. You have a week of absolute stress and heartache, and then things turn around, and you'll have a few weeks of good stuff. And being in business, that's what it's all about. So anyway, that's the end of my video for today. Hope you guys have enjoyed the content and listening to my ramblings, and may have gleaned a few things out of it that you can use yourself. If you've enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Then hit that bell so you know when my videos are coming up. And I'd just like to say thank you for watching this video, and I'd like to see you all next time. Goodbye.